You're listening to Mark of the Maker. Hey everybody, I'm Mark Steiner and you're listening to Mark of the Maker. This is episode 124 of the show and we have a guest with us. Let's get through making sure we got everybody here. We have Mr. Michael Birch.
Here.
We have Sean Kendrick.
Hey.
Sorry, I should have said Mr. Sean Kendrick.
Oh, that's fine. I'm not big on the formality, you know.
We have Mr. Tom Crine.
Hey, guys.
All right, so the whole crew is here. Let's take care of some business first. Sean, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to all of our supporters on Patreon. Thank you guys for sticking with us and giving us a little bit of bread every month. We truly appreciate it. And you guys keep mics moving, you keep the lights on, and you help to keep us motivated. Thank you very much. And if you're listening to this and you're not part of our Patreon, maybe consider heading over there and giving us $1 or $2 a month. It would be appreciated, and you'd help us fight the good fight and keep the word out. So head over to patreon.com and just search for Mark of the Maker and, give us a little bit of consideration and maybe some of your cash.
Some shekels.
And also, it's a cheap way to help us out. If you want to rate and review us, that always helps. That helps keep us in the algorithm, and that helps potentially get us in front of more folks who would enjoy the show.
Thank you, Sean. Look at Sean. Sean always remembers the algorithm.
I forget about the algorithm.
I think he's trying to make nice with AI. I think that's what's going on. He sees the future coming, and he's like, this motherfucker, I'm getting in his pants right now.
Please, the Overlord.
Keep your enemies close.
Exactly.
Fuck a bunch
Tom?
of AI.
Tom, you out there?
I am. I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Giant Mouse. If you haven't checked out their stuff, you really need to. Their stuff's really good. How good? I bought several pieces and my boys have stolen all of them.
Oh.
I actually looked over the other day and Ben had the the hunter type one.
Yep.
That was in his pocket. And I just got that not long ago. Really nice knife.
These boys don't know boundaries, Tom. That's what this means.
This is our giant mouse.
Yes. And then the other day, Zach had the, what's the other one I have? The Ace, I think. That was in his pocket. And I was just like, yeah, I don't have one anymore. So I was looking on the website and they've got the new Blecker. If you haven't checked that out, you should probably check it out.
The Bleecker, that's a great one.
Bleecker?
Yep.
That thing is super. I love the lines on it. Carbon fiber, just really smooth lines, really almost like a gentleman's knife, and it's in Magna Cut, so should be a great little knife. Hopefully I can keep a hold of one of them.
Yeah, good luck with that, buddy.
I know.
The Bleecker is one of my faves too. Where can they find Giant Mouse knives, Tom?
Giantmouse.com.
There you go.
So, yeah. Check it out. They got a cool blog too. So anyways.
All right. We also need to say thanks to Bob and Suze Terzuola. Thank you, Bob and Suze, for helping us out, sponsoring the show. You can find Bob's work and Susie's stuff as well at terzuola.net. Bob's always got stuff going on. I think, he's slowing down, and then boom, pictures of a whole bunch of knives, or boom, here's Bob in a Santa costume grinding blades or building knives. So they're very busy over there. Susie's got her own podcast, the Knife Wife podcast, so go check that out as well. And yeah, you can.
My wife has been on that with him.
Yeah. So there you go, terzuola.net. Michael,
your wife was on a famous podcast. Now you're going to be on a famous podcast.
A less famous podcast for Brian. Sorry.
Sorry, Brian.
We also like to give thanks to knifejoy.com. Tons of productions. They got some customs. They got a little bit of everything over there. And you can get on their list, sign up to get exclusive information about drops and whatnot. Free shipping on orders over $40. They got some cool stuff, man. Like we've mentioned, a ton of really badass Spyderco pieces over there. And it's knifejoy.com. We appreciate them supporting the podcast.
They sell pens too.
Oh,
No, nobody likes pens. Let's keep moving on from there.
There's that.
Meh.
Sorry, dude. I'm into chicks. Keep your pins.
we'll get to pen talk. We'll get to
I don't know. I heard about your drink earlier.
yeah,
Our
yeah.
guest is really talking a lot during our ads. I don't
Yeah,
know
the
what-
mystery man. Sean, you're up.
Yeah, I want to thank Josh and the good folks at Paladin 33 for sponsoring the show, and trying to pick out a product from them and talk about it every time because they got so much cool stuff. I generally don't know where to start. This time I'm going to talk about the Skywalker discreet rifle case, and man, I mean, great rifle case. You got your choice of prints. You can get it in just straight black or in the Poppies of War print. You can get it in 16-inch rifle length, or you can get it in a 10.5-inch carbine length. And this is a really discreet rifle case. It doesn't scream, "Hey, I got a fucking gun." It could be any number of things in this well-made bag. And there's a lot to be said for that, especially for you folks who live in more urban areas and maybe your neighbors are a little nosy. And they also have, what did you call it, Mark? A day pack?
Yeah, they got a day pack that he's getting ready to release sometime soon.
Yeah, the Peak. And looking forward to seeing that come out.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at it. You can go check it out on their Instagram, which is paladin_33. Or if you want to purchase something, you can head over to paladin33.com and pick up some cool nylon gear.
They got a DOP kit they're releasing tonight too, supposedly. So that was one of the things I was going to try to scare up for myself, was a new bathroom bag for traveling.
Josh is good people, and their products are really good.
For sure. Tom, you got the last one.
Last but not least, let's give a shout out to Arizona Custom Knives. Excuse me. I've loved Arizona Custom Knives for a very long time, like way back in the 90s when it was a printout from the original guys in Arizona. The new website and owners, I say new, 20 years probably. They're doing a fantastic job. If you haven't been on there, check it out. They've got 14,000 items on there. They do new releases every day at like 3:30. They even have like a little countdown clock that tells you how many more hours before they do a release. Check them out. They're really good. They've been kind enough to give us a free shipping code, and that is all lowercase, mark of the maker, ! Check it out. They've got something you will like. They probably even have pins on there. So
They do.
anyways, give them a shout. Tell them you heard it from us.
Yeah, so much stuff. And the cool part is, it's like, if you can think of a maker's name, chances are if you search, they have had stuff from them, whether they currently do or not. And they have a lot of stuff that is just kind of, God, who knows how deep in the site, right? I think Nick Swan mentioned that when he was on the show with us, right? That when he used to visit, it was like, you just go pull a random box out. And it's like, oh my God, this is just in a box stashed away on a shelf somewhere in the middle of a pile of stuff. So lots of good stuff. And yeah, grab that free shipping code, mark with maker, ! All lowercase. All right. Well, you've heard from our mystery man already. Our guest, Mr. Brian Fellhoelter. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it, gentlemen. Didn't realize I should have kept my mouth shut there earlier.
No.
It's tricky keeping me down sometimes.
We get extra money on that if you
Nice.
participate. Yeah, it's good.
Celebrity endorsement. So Brian, I was like, how do I refer to Brian? I would call Brian a maker of things. So what I wrote down was knives, grinders, tools, pens, flashlights, yo-yos. I'll call them building blocks because I don't want to say the trademark name of what they are. Little blocks with pegs. But do you think of yourself that way, Brian, as a maker of stuff, or do you think of yourself as a designer? Maybe kind of they go hand in hand. But
It's actually pretty much exactly how I describe myself when somebody asks what I do. Is I make things.
yeah,
And what sort of things? Depends on what mood strikes me or what need I have
right.
any particular day or week or month. There's really no limit and no beginning or end to the spectrum of the different things that I have and will and do make.
Right. So all kinds of different stuff. And is it stuff where maybe it's like you said, is it like whatever Brian feels like making, or that likely it's that combined with, I see a place for this or a market for it?
I'd like to say that it's often I see a market for it, but the times when I've done that and I think I see a market and I decide I'm going to go make something to fit that market are always my least successful ventures.
Maybe
I find the greatest success when I kind of just stumble across it because I wanted to make something for myself or make something for my pocket or make something for a gift or just make something to see if I could. Those things are always much more successful than the things that I think are going to be successful.
Right.
Kind of following your whimsy.
Yeah. Yeah. If I follow the muse, I seem to be a little more successful than if I try and chase the dollar.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of funny how that works when things we're passionate about.
So before we get too deep into it, Brian, if people want to get a feel, I think your website gives some idea as to the scope of this, although you don't have all those things on there right now. Where can people find you on social media and on the web?
Social media is mostly Facebook. I spend most of my time doing there just for historical purposes, I guess. I've got a large group there. I've got a lot of followers there, and I understand its format the best. I'm starting to try and do Instagram a bit more lately because I don't do much. I mean, I've had an Instagram account for, I think last time I looked, it was over 10 years, but I only have like 100 posts.
Right.
So it's not something I do a lot. And pretty much every one of your sponsors there also sells my goods.
Yeah.
And if they're a retailer of stuff, they probably buy from me and sell something that I make.
Nice. So your Facebook group is Fellhoelter Toolworks.
Fellhoelter Toolworks, yep.
Yeah. And then what's the website?
Website's fellhoelter.com.
Okay. Fellhoelter.
That's it. Just like it sounds, you know?
Just like it sounds, exactly. All right. Well, so usually with this thing, it's always interesting to talk about where people came from. Maybe talk a little bit about where did you grow up, born and raised, what was that like? Was it city, country, desert, middle of nowhere, forest, who knows? Tell us a little bit about that part of your life.
Well, growing up, I grew up in the city. I grew up in LA. As far as, that's where our house was. But we were, I guess, sort of an odd family in that there wasn't a project going on the weekend. And by project, I mean like building a house or repairing a house or something along those lines. We were probably camping. We were either up in the mountains camping or out in the desert camping because my grandfather, the patriarch of the family, was a fisherman. Like most people, hey, what do you do? They'll tell, I'm a plumber or I'm a this or I'm a that. He was a fisherman. If he wasn't working, he was fishing. So we were all out fishing and camping and hunting and all those things. So, and growing up in LA, you can get to all of those kind of places relatively quickly. A lot of people don't necessarily know how California's geography is laid out, but if traffic permitting, you can be in just about any sort of environment you want to within 2 hours.
Yeah.
100 miles in any direction. You're either in the ocean or in the forest or in the desert. So we spent lots of our time camping and hunting and fishing.
Yeah. What had your family in California? Does that go back some number of generations, or was it go there for the work kind of thing?
Yeah. It was actually World War II. My family was all from Kansas.
Okay.
My father's side of the family they were all farmers. As a matter of fact, there's this little town, can't think of its name right now, in Kansas that you look at the high school yearbook, there's like 2 family names in it, our family and the other family. But World War II broke out and all my grandfather's brothers all joined the Navy and went off and fought in the Pacific. My grandfather was a little too young. And when they came back, they all stayed in California.
Right.
And then at 12 years old, my grandfather says he came home from school one day back to the farm in Kansas, and his dad told him, well, hey, I sold the farm. I'm moving into the bed and breakfast type place in town. Where are you going? He got on a train and went out to his brothers in California, and we've been there ever since. Okay. So my parents were born there. Well, my father was. My mom was born in Greece. My dad was born in California, and then I was born in California, so I guess I'm second generation.
Right.
But we've abandoned that state a long time ago.
Yeah. So doing stuff on the weekends, that's super common here as well. Michigan's got lots of awesome outdoor stuff to do. Obviously no desert here, but you can get to a freshwater lake that looks like the ocean. Or you can get to some killer forest, sand dunes and other stuff. So
it's like a desert.
Very common here for people to do their thing during the week and then get out of here and either head north or west or something for the week.
Yeah, we were never idle. If it was a weekend, like I said, there was either a project, we were building something, making something, repairing something, or we were camping. And by camping, I mean, like, I pitched a tent and, we were camping. Yeah. And nice. Grandma and Grandpa and Mom and Dad, they had, campers on the back of the truck, but the kids didn't get to stay in those. You pitched a tent. And
right.
That was it.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you spent your weekends. That was what you did. If you were lucky, you went to a place where you could take your bicycle or something, but otherwise it was wandering around with Red Riders and Crosman BB guns, fishing poles in the morning and in the evening, and all day if they were biting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a bit envious of that. We didn't camp growing up at all. My dad hated that kind of stuff. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't camp until college.
Oh, wow.
And I went head over heels on it. I love that kind of stuff. And that's like my whole college experience and pretty much how I've lived my life since. My kids have been out hiking or camping all the time.
Yeah, it's strange now that we live in Mississippi, everybody's got a camp. Everybody has a camp.
Yeah.
We've got a camp. We have two camps. We've got a deer camp, which it's deer season now, so we go up to deer camp. Nice. And we have a beer camp for the summertime. But none of these camps are camping. There's running water, there's electricity. Our beer camp's got probably 3,000 square foot under roof.
Right.
Some of them are nicer than the houses these people live in.
Are you saying beer camp?
Yeah.
Deer and so. Beer.
Yeah.
How come I've never heard of beer camp before?
I don't know.
You should get out
come
more,
to visit.
Yeah, no shit.
Depends on the time of year. Beer camp is a camp on the side of a river that we've got down here, and there's I don't know how many hundreds of miles of mud riding and stuff through the forest out here. So it's all side by sides and four wheelers and stuff, and you go play in the river, and then let's go for a mud ride, and off you go in the side by sides off through the forest and back to camp to cook and eat and sit in the air conditioning.
And beer, right?
There's air conditioning at camp.
Beer, right?
And beer, yeah. Well, there's deer camp. I don't know that anybody else calls it beer camp, but everybody's got deer camp out here. So we bought this other camp for the summertime, and it's like, well, we've got deer camp and we've got beer camp.
There you go. Michael, you need to change MO to MS.
Yeah, that's no shit.
You do.
I guess.
Clearly, you're missing out in Missouri.
I tell you what, the kids love it. Rope swings into the creek, and
oh yeah, I bet
riding everywhere and kids everywhere, and lots of good times. But it's a whole different thing than it was, California and then Arizona later on, and then to here.
Yeah.
So what kind of cool knives did your grandfather have? Did you ever see any of those?
Grandpa carried a buck knife and gave me my first buck knife when I was 9. I think my 9th birthday, I got my first buck knife.
Do you know which model?
The 110 or 112, whatever that one's called.
Folder?
Folder.
Yeah. Very cool.
And he carried a case knife that was an advertisement for the plumbing company that he worked for. I don't know how they managed to have their own knife made. It had its own little their logo on it as a shield, and maybe it wasn't actually a case knife, but that was the vernacular back then. Was hand me the case knife, and there was always one of those in his pocket, and generally a buck knife on the hip, and all of us had a buck knife. We all just carried buck knives.
Hard to beat.
They were, and then Victorinox's, he bought me one of those, my very first Swiss Army knife. So I had one of those in my pocket all the way from, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade until I was in my 20s, the one on the keychain. And back then, it wasn't like it is these days. You had a knife in your pocket even at school.
Right.
There was always a Swiss Army knife and whatever.
Yeah, different times.
But I can remember going to school and like handing my knife into the teacher, and then he would give it to me at recess, and I could like carve and do stupid stuff at recess.
Wow.
Oh, but you had to give it to him during class time?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Huh. Interesting.
Funny.
Yeah, I don't remember anything like that ever being an issue. Everybody had a pocket knife. Even this was California. I mean, imagine that today in California.
Correct. And we usually had pocket knives too, but we couldn't take them out. So if I wanted to use it at recess time, I had to turn it in, and then I could get it back at recess.
Oh, okay. Then you had permission to be able to actually do something with it.
Correct.
This sounds like it might have been a Tom-based rule situation. I'm going out on a limb.
Might not have been a normal policy for everybody.
Maybe not for everyone, but
maybe.
Distracted Tommy in the corner over there. Cough it up, buddy.
Heck, they do it now at my kid's school with archery and shotguns. My kid's on the archery team and the sporting clays team. And the guns and the bows go to the principal's office. And when it's time for practice, they come out of the principal's office and practice.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think that kind of stuff, whether it's a Swiss Army knife or a slip joint, a case knife or whatever, it's almost a requirement for somebody who's either tinkering with stuff and or doing stuff outdoors, right? Like it doesn't really work without something like that in your pocket.
Right, you have to, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's why it was always buck knives back then, because they were tough.
Right.
They weren't a good knife. I mean, let's face it. The buck knife is sharp when you get it, and then it's never sharp like that again. But you could still whack down a limb off of a tree or carve whatever you wanted. It just took some energy to do it, but the knife was strong enough to do it, and you had it. So
our claws
you could dig and pry and carve and whatever.
What were you saying, Tom?
Our claws as humans aren't very good.
Right.
We need a little help.
Yeah, it was a definite improvement upon that.
Yeah. So you had exposure to that stuff as a kid. How did you end up, like, where did your path go into high school or through school and after? What did that look like for you, Brian?
Real circuitous path.
The long, twisted road.
This is where the story gets interesting.
Well, high school, I didn't actually finish high school legitimately. I guess I did. I just didn't do all the time. I graduated and tested out at 15 years old.
Yeah.
So I went off to junior college, and I was studying to do engineering. I wanted to be engineer, and that didn't pan out because of just reasons. I ended up on my own, living out of the house at 17 years old. While what should have been my senior year of high school, I'm already on my own with a job, having to pay rent and all that stuff. And I tried to join the military. That didn't work out. I tried to join the California Conservation Corps. That didn't work out. And I was on unemployment, and I came home from joining the Conservation Corps. Actually, I joined the Conservation Corps, but I did it on the day that they pulled the funding for it. So nobody's going to boot camp. We closed it down today, literally the day I joined. I came home from my physical, and there was a thing in the mail from unemployment office, and like to work with your hands, good with math, blah, blah, blah. We'll pay you to go to school. And it was machinist school. So awesome. I went down, took their test, did well on it, and they paid me to go to school 40 hours a week for 6 months.
Nice.
And they didn't pay me much. I made like $90 a week or whatever the heck unemployment was. But I didn't have to look for a job. I got to go and do some training and make cool stuff. And it was neat. That kind of snowballed into a actual apprenticeship. When I got out of there, I apprenticed as a mold maker, plastic injection molding. So I'd go back and forth from school to work and did that for 2 years to get through my apprenticeship. And from there, I jumped around from machine shop to machine shop, kept finding the next cool, interesting place to go and work and learn. I moved to Arizona for a while and built chainsaws, molds for big die casting molds and stuff for McCulloch, building chainsaws and weed whackers and all that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
then an aerospace place that I went to on a field trip years ago in LA, I heard they were hiring, and I knew they built the rockets for the space shuttle, the two on the side. They actually built the cones for the space shuttle. They were deeply involved in space shuttle and space station projects. I heard they were hiring, so I went and applied there. Got the job. Went back to California. And I did that for a couple years. And it got to be very stressful, being early 20s and working on multi-million-dollar projects and all that sort of stuff. So I got in the habit of quitting at opportune times. Oh, El Nino year, snowing. I'd get myself fired and go snowboarding for 4 or 5 months. And when you've been working 80 hours a week, in your early 20s, you put away a bunch of money and you can kind of sponsor yourself snowboarding for a while. So right. I did that for a couple of years. And then whitewater rafting came up. I went up to a summertime. I'm going to do a summertime, get myself fired and go do something for a summer. And that was whitewater rafting. So I went and got a gig whitewater rafting. And I was only going to do that for a summer. But I met Christy up there, who's now my wife.
Yeah.
And between her, which didn't work out at the time, I actually met her the day she joined the Air Force.
Okay.
But between her and just loving the whitewater gig so much, I stayed up there and I ended up doing it for 5 years. And every winter, I would then get a job at a machine shop and work through the winter till the snow started to melt.
Whereabouts were you doing the whitewater rafting thing, Brian?
Lake Isabella.
Ah, okay.
Which is kind of central California, east of Bakersfield, Kern River.
Okay.
And we did everything from little couple-hour trips to 3-day trips, 3-day Class 5 stuff, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And being young and dumb and with a fallback career, we'll say, I actually had machining skills.
Right.
I could earn enough in the winter to sponsor myself again in the summer because whitewater rafting pays, but, it pays pennies. You make $40 a day, not $400.
Right.
So winter times I'd go back to machining, and summer times I'd go whitewater rafting. And eventually I just made a knife because I wanted to. I'd been collecting material for years to do it, and eventually I made myself a knife, and some people saw it and said, you should go do a show, our show. And I did, and it just kind of snowballed from there eventually. Yeah. I didn't work much longer for other people after that.
What was that first show? Just curious.
The Pasadena show, California. The California SC Blades, Southern California Blades, Knife Collectors Association.
Huh.
They put on a show, and they did it for years. They hosted the show for like 25 or 30 years. It was Emerson's home show. It was
right.
It was the big West Coast show, really, for a long time.
When was that first one?
My first one, I think, was 05 or 06.
That's cool.
So had you been on the forums at all? At what point did you hop on that stuff?
So that's interesting. I made my knife, and I was working for TRD, Toyota Racing, at the time, and I had a little bit of downtime, so I made my first knife on their machine. Literally just made 2 folding knives. Christy had given me one of Bob Terzuola's books for Christmas. And I read his book, and oh man, I'm going to make a knife. And, but the year before I even made a knife, I ended up in Atlanta when Blade Show was happening. Unrelated. I just went to visit a buddy in Atlanta. Hey, what's going on this weekend? Hey, there's a knife show. Hey, I wonder if this old man whose book I just read is going to be there. And I went in and found Bob. Sure enough, hey, he's there. So he took me around, and I introduced myself, and being Bob, he takes me and shows me, you're going to want a grinder like this. You're going to want a thing like that. You're going to want a this. You're going to want a that. Now, come on out back. Let's go smoke. And out back we go and smoke. And out there I meet Ken Onion and Kit Carson and, all these guys. And I'm still just some random asshole. I'm not even like a knife collector. I'm just kind of happened to stumble into the place. And like I said, I still hadn't made a knife, but we had some downtime at Toyota. I made myself a knife. I come home and I Googled something knife related, and hey, there's knife collector club going on here right down the street, literally like 2 or 3 miles away tonight. So me and my uncle hopped on our motorcycles and rode down there to see what a knife collector club thing was about with the 2 knives I had just made in my pocket. And I get there, and somehow it comes out, because it's a knife collectors club. So I'm showing it off. And, well, how long you been making knives, son? Because it's all old men. I'm 30. And, these guys are all in their 60s and 70s. And, there's some younger ones too. But by younger, I mean 50s. How long you been making knives, son? So I look at my watch, and it's like, hey, man, it's almost 3 whole hours now. And they were folding knives, by the way. I didn't carry a fixed blade, so it never occurred to me to make a fixed blade.
Yeah.
And that was when they told me I should come to the show and this and that. But the question was about forums, and I met a guy there. He's like, oh, you should join this forum, the Usual Suspect Network. Oh, okay. This is like Tuesday night. So I go home and Google it and end up joining the USN, and that weekend is one of those old Vegas classic shows, like attached to the gun show type thing.
Yep.
That weekend was one of those shows. So me and Christy are like, screw it, let's go to Vegas. It's a good time. Living in LA, young, single, no kids. Off to Vegas we go, and we end up at the knife show. And hey, USN, they've got a table. That's that forum I just joined. Let's go say hi. So we walk over and say hi, and I met Jer, and several of the guys of the old suspects are sitting there, and the knife comes out of my pocket, and I show it to them, and oh my God, you've got to. And again, how long you been making knives? They'll look at my watch, and it's like, oh shit, 3 whole days now.
Yeah,
and now I'm like getting dragged by the hand, like I was like a little kid or something. Here, you got to come meet so and so. Here, you got to go meet such and such. It's off to meet all these different people, and it literally just snowballed from there. You mentioned Arizona Custom Knives, one of your sponsors. I met Julie. Julie owned it, and that was probably 05, so you were guessing 20 years earlier, Tom. I think it's been 20 years. I met Julie that day, and Jens, and Burnley. Burnley was a relatively new maker, but he had a table, and Christy and I talked with him for a long time. And literally, it was just kept stumbling into the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Repeatedly. Oh, there's this going on this week. There's that's going on. Oh, you should talk to these people. And it was, you couldn't plan it and have everything work out the way it seemed to have worked out for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've known most of you guys almost that long.
Right.
Yeah. I distinctly remember, when you got on USN or whatever, and you're like, my first knife with a folder, and we're all looking around like, who's this asshole? Nobody just makes a folder first. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
20
There's rules
before I ever made a fixed blade.
Yeah, that's not how it's supposed to work, man.
And it was literally because I never carried a fixed blade. I didn't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
The fuck would I make a fixed blade for?
To learn.
I wonder how many
but at those knife collectors meetings, I met another maker that was there that was local. TC Collins was his name, cool old guy. And he's like, oh, I have a shop. If you ever got any time, just come by and visit. So I went by and visited one day a week or so later. And The son of a bitch built a knife in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, it takes me like a whole day. So before the first knife show I went to, I made a bunch of fixed blades too. So my very first knife show was maybe, I don't know, 2.5 months after I made my first knife. It was in February. No, it was in March. And I made my first knife Christmas time. And I went with 21 or 22 folders and like 13 fixed blades.
Wow.
Damn.
Crazy.
And the fixed blades were literally just to fill the time. Like, oh, I got to have something else for my table. I could build a shitload of those in a week.
Yeah.
Apparently, I kind of hate Brian. I'm going to jump off.
So,
Just kidding.
You're not the first one.
so what were you using at that time? What kind of equipment? What, like, were you grinding? What was going on there?
The first knives I made were all literally done at Toyota. I mean, I built them all on the TRD equipment. I went and bought myself a hardcore grinder, which I still have, from True Grit, because True Grit was a local company, and I went to their place and they had one that somebody had bought it and decided they weren't going to make knives, so they had this used one there. So I bought it and brought it home, but all the machining, all the drilling, all of that stuff was all done at a Toyota, and then I brought them home and ground them. But I did make a fixture, so I had a little plate that I put them on because I'm an inventor of gadgets, so I couldn't figure out how on earth I'm ever going to be able to hold a knife straight and grind and have bevels match and stuff. But there's a work rest here, so I could get a little ankle plate and build the thing here. And Bob had, ideas in his book of what he used, and I'd, probably worn out my first copy of his book already. So I kind of went along those lines and built similar tooling to what he used and just got after it.
Yeah, you're very much like Bob in that way of you make a lot of jigs, a lot of helpful shop tool type of things that I find very intriguing. Because I remember you made like a...
I think every one of you owns something I've made, some sort of tool I've made. Maybe Kendrick doesn't. I don't remember selling Sean anything, but I think you and Tom each have one of my grinders, don't you?
Yeah, I've got an Uber. I use it. Every knife touches it. It's my pretty much horizontal.
I know I sold Tom one, but you might have given that to those folks up in Alaska when their shop burned. I don't know if you ended up with one in your shop or not.
Yeah, I did. I actually had two at that point, and I hadn't even unboxed that one, and their shop burnt down, and I just put a new address on it and shipped it to them.
Yeah, I remember that because there was something like I added a contact wheel or something and sent that along too.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was.
I think they're still using that main grinder.
Awesome.
Yeah, no reason not to.
Yeah,
I use the Uber grinder I have every single day. It's literally set up in my folder area, and that's the one I use it every day.
Right. Like I say, I don't remember ever selling Kendrick anything, but I know that you other guys have bought stuff that I make because, there's something that can be improved, or, this task is tedious or annoying or whatever. I figure out a way to build a gadget to make it less tedious, less annoying.
I've got a lock cutting fixture I've never used. Got to use that soon.
I sold a lot of those.
What was it? Your non-hand rubbing platen that you made yourself?
Yeah.
That was one that everyone was like, "What the fuck is this?"
I still use it. I have a whole grinder set up that way because I've never been a hollow grinder. Because of building the fixture and stuff that I initially did, and the grinder that I had, I started out by flat grinding, and it just kept going. And hand rubbing sucks, so let's figure out a way to run the belt and get it running the direction that you'd hand rub. And so that thing came to be from there. At this new shop where I'm at now, I actually have it plumbed into the building.
Yeah.
So it's water cooled, and it's coming fresh water in and out into the septic tank.
We're finally seeing versions of that like on the market called like waterfall platens and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of wild.
That's funny.
Yeah, I used to do it way back 15 years ago. I had it in a bucket with like an aquarium pump, pumping water through it. And then that water would get so hot, I was freezing blocks of ice and dropping blocks of ice in the 5-gallon bucket to keep it cool. Works good, though. I can hand rub a blade, and I don't spend 5 minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes hand rubbing a blade because of taking it to that grinder first. I go all the way up to 400 on it and have everything looking real good right off the machine.
I find hand rubbing to be very easy anymore.
Do you?
Yeah, I just don't do it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, but you're like a grinding machine, man.
I hate hand rubbing blades. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
It does not bother me at all.
There's just so many better things you can be doing with your time.
It hurts my hands.
Is there though? I just get to sit there and relax. I sit down while I'm doing it. I don't mind it.
I'd rather watch TV, read a book, anything but hand rub.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess it all depends on what you're rubbing.
Yep. Yeah.
That could matter too.
That's true.
How did so you got into doing the knife thing. That kind of exploded, right?
Yeah, that blew up. I went to the first show and I won awards, and then somehow I still don't understand how I got into Blade Show the first time.
Yeah.
Because I was aware of Blade Show because I'd been there the year before. Like I said, I literally just stumbled across it. I happened to be in Atlanta at the same time as Blade Show. Literally just stumbled across Blade Show. The very next year, I'd now made a knife. 6 months later, I made my knife in Christmas time of that year. Blade Show's early June. Christmas time, I made my first knife. And February, March, I did my first show. And, I should go to Blade Show. That was fun. There was a lot of knives and a lot of people and a lot of money there. So I reached out to them. And I don't even think I reached out. I think I just went to the website and whatever. There's a waiting list. You're not going to Blade Show, Brian. There's a waiting list to get into Blade Show back in the day. I don't know if there still is, but there was then. And then randomly, like in late April, early May, like 5 weeks before Blade Show, I got an email that I heard you want a table at Blade Show. If you're interested, we'll sell you a table. Oh, cool. So I did. I quit my job. I was working at Optical Laboratory at that time. I quit that job, and by then I had bought myself a Bridgeport, and I just made a bunch of knives and went to Blade Show and went to every damn show I could for a little while. And everywhere I went, I won awards. And with awards come more press and come more customers and all of that stuff. So it really just snowballed. And like I mentioned earlier, I think smoking back then really gave me a boost, because when I met Bob that first time, we went out back at Blade Show, out back by the dumpsters, and because Bob smoked pipe and I smoked cigarettes, and we went out back to smoke. And like I said, I hadn't even made a knife, but he introduced me Ken Onions out there. Hey, get to meet Ken. Kit Carson's there. Hey, Kit. So now when the next year shows up and I show up with knives, and I go out back there to smoke, and it's like, well, aren't you that kid from last year? Yeah. You said you hadn't made any knives before. I hadn't. Well, let me see. And I'm showing them my knives, and they're all folding knives. So, holy shit, look at this thing. And wow, back and forth. Hey, Kit, come over here. Look at this thing. And they all just kind of took me under their wing, I guess, and pointed me at the right dealers and all that sort of stuff. And I keep using the word snowball, but that snowball just kept rolling, All of a sudden there's more demand, there's more interest, there's more this, there's more that. And
I guarantee your table sales went up when you went out back smoking.
Absolutely. And that was another thing. Yeah, my smoking hot wife, man. Sometimes I'd walk back and see that there's like 8 dudes at the table. I'm gonna stop here and bullshit with whoever the hell I'm near right now, because I'd walk up to the table and the dudes all scatter.
Yeah, that was the good old days when you were right across, and like Michael Birch was like real close.
Yeah.
Jens, Jesper, Lou, Brian Good. We were all like right in there.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Those were the early days of Blade Show.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd go and smoke, and my table would be dead. And I'd go and smoke, and I'd come back, and there'd be 8 guys there.
All the knives would be gone. It was crazy.
That's funny.
Go figure.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty smart to leave a hot blonde there sometimes.
Right.
Well, Christy's also, she's awesome. You know, she knows the product. She worked the table like a pro.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah.
You guys are a great team. Yeah, great team.
So, Brian, at that time, you were calling it Fellhoelter Knife Works at the time. Is that right? Or was that a name that kind of came along the way?
Yeah, KnifeWorks. The website I owned then was KnifeWorks, because once I made a knife and realized like I might be able to sell them, because I didn't make those first two with the intent of selling at all. I literally just made the knife for my pocket and one for my uncle's pocket. And that was going to be the end of my knife making excursion, you know? But once I realized like, hey, I can like turn this into a side hustle. I started looking at websites, and that was the first one I found that stuck was KnifeWorks with a E. So yeah, I went by KnifeWorks for a long time. Until the Krauts that owned my last name, Fellhoelter, once they finally lost the website and I got it, then everything's kind of switched a bit to my name. Yeah. Even my first knives, my first 30 or 40 knives out there, I'll have KnifeWorks etched on them, not my name.
Yeah.
All the way up to that first show. I went to, not the first show, but my first Blade show when I got out there. Bob looks at my knives, Onion looks at my knives, Kit looks at my knives, and what the fuck is KnifeWorks? Put your damn name on there. Nothing else, just your name. You could put your city, you can put this, but your name. Not a logo, not some sort of glyph that if somebody finds it in the street, they'll never be able to figure out who the hell you are. Put your name on there.
Right.
So, yeah, it went to my name. Not even in like a fancy font or nothing. Fucking Arial. Bell.
That's a very old school knife maker thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That mantra about make sure your name is on the knife. I think it's a good piece of advice, but
I agree.
It needs to be on there somewhere.
Yeah.
How many times you seen I got this? Anyone know who made this? And it's just some like astrological sign or something. You're like, I don't know.
Like I said, some weird glyph on there. What the hell is that? I don't know.
Yeah. So I remember you got into like even production deals pretty quickly. We're talking about snowballing. And I think, what was your first? Was it the rafting knife?
Yeah. The ECS, the emergency condiment spreader. I invented that mechanism for latching a knife into the sheath from whitewater rafting. I mean, it started. I had to carry a knife, and like I say, I spent 5 years doing this gig, and the best knives out there in the market were Gerber, but I'd still lose a Gerber almost every year. I lost a knife because they were any knife that is you don't have to jump through hoops to get out of the sheath can also fall out. So you end up losing one. So I came up with something that is much harder to lose. And also in that 5 years, I realized how many times what did we use a knife for the most? Spreading peanut butter, cutting avocados to make guacamole, making lunch. It was for cutting fucking condiments and spreading stuff at lunch, man. You carry a knife on your jacket in case you ever need them in an emergency. But in 5 years, I used my knife one time to cut a rope that was strung across a river, and I saw one of my buddies cut the bottom out of a boat because another buddy was trapped underneath it. And that was the only 2 times I ever actually saw a knife used in any sort of emergency on the water. So when it came time for a name, I just called it the ECS, the Emergency Condiment Spreader. And yeah, I licensed that to Timberline at the time. I didn't understand how the system worked, like setting up meetings with companies and whatnot. So I made that and thought like, oh, this would be a great knife for Columbia River. Well, first it was Gerber because I carried a Gerber.
Yeah.
And the Gerber guys came by my desk, by my table. And honestly, they made me so angry, I ran them off. Get the hell away from me and leave my table. Don't ever talk to me again. They were trying to tell me everything I was doing wrong when they should have been asking me what they were doing wrong, in my opinion. because I literally carried one hundreds and hundreds of days on the water.
Right.
I've got a pretty good idea what they need to be. So anyhow, I ran them off, and then I decided, I'll go show it to Columbia River. And well, like I said, I didn't know the drill. So I didn't set up a meeting. I just went over and found Rod and tried to Shanghai him. Hey, you need to look at this. And so I got shooed away. And then there was one of the other companies wanted to do a contract, but they had like this literally like 12 or 14 page contract and jumped through all kinds of hoops, and you can only design for us, and lots and lots of rigmarole on that. And so I called a couple of people that I knew had designed and worked with them in the past, and they said, oh no, stay away from them. So I took the other offer, which was Columbia River. Hi, Christy. All the guys say hi.
Hola.
There's food there.
Thank you. She just brought me some dinner. So yeah, I ended up going with Timberline, which probably wasn't the best call because they weren't much of a company. In fact, they're out of business now. But yeah, it is what it is. And that was only like you said, I think it was Michael brought it up. That was maybe a year and a half or 2 years into making knives. It was pretty quick.
Yeah. I remember you showing me that and telling me, and I was like, what a fucking asshole.
I seem to have that effect on people.
Mm-hmm.
So did Timberline get sold to somebody? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I forget who ended up buying all their stuff. United, maybe?
Oh.
I don't know, but man, they made some cool ass knives back in the day.
They did. And they were owned by Gatco, the Great American Tool Company, which was all kinds of really neat sharpeners and gadgets. You know, I'm a gadget guy, and they had gadgets. So, and I liked them. Their contract was literally a page. It wasn't written by a lawyer. It was, we're going to give you X percentage, and that's it. It was pretty much it.
Cool.
Yeah, it wasn't the Benchmade 27-page thing where you got to sign over your soul and the rights to anything you ever think about or do. And so I went with them, and it paid enough money to buy a pair of shoes that I used to walk to the mailbox.
Right.
So, okay, so after you've been dicking around with knives for a bit, what was your first gadgety type thing, non-knife?
The first one, I don't know. Let me think. The first one might have been a pen.
Was it the pen or was it the vapes? I remember you got into vapes for...
No, vapes were after.
Were they? Okay.
Yeah, vapes were after pens. I was already well into pens by the time I started doing vape stuff. Yeah,
Okay,
I think.
So how'd that come about?
I think the pens were the first thing that I did and made any money, and that started because I was working overseas. So I took a job where I worked. I worked in hitches. I worked 5 weeks on and 5 weeks off in Africa, and I used that to the ungodly amounts of money that they pay you to do that. I used that money to start buying machinery and be able to finance myself as a knife maker. And while I was over there, I had a lot of free time. I had to be at my machine shop 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 35 days in a row. But legitimately, I probably did 7 or 8 days worth of work the whole time I was there. So I had a lot of freaking time to kill, bored. So I just started tweaking on stuff while I was out there, and I came up with I started making a bunch of pens, and it started with like kit pen stuff where you buy clickers, and I'm making carbon fiber tubes and titanium tubes to fit all these things in. And well, I'm not satisfied with that. So I'm coming up with my own little mechanisms, and came up with the bolt action mechanism while I was over there. And when I came home, I have better machinery, so I made a few of them because I'm going to a knife show. So screw it, I'll put a couple pens and take them with me. And I went to the gathering, and that was probably 2009. 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right. I went to the gathering and sold them all. I took half a dozen, whatever it was. It wasn't very many, but they were also, much more expensive then. They were like $1,000 or something for the version that, I used an Angry Badger to machine because I was building them in Africa. I was going to enter the contest. They've always got, that best of the rest or, the non-knife related thing.
Oh yeah.
At the shows. And I had made a cork gun, like an old fashioned freaking cork gun like we had in the 70s, pull the little string and little pop gun, the cork pops out the end.
I think I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd been fucking with people all weekend. I brought two. I brought one that had the string, so I playing with it all weekend. Pop, pop, pop. So make everybody not nervous. Everybody's a little annoyed with me running around with this little pop gun all the time. But they're not on edge anymore because, a string catches it. Little did they know I had another one with no string and a pocket full of corks. But anyhow, I'm running up to the contest. I'm going to enter that into the contest, best of the rest, just as a goof. Let's put my freaking cork gun up there. And somebody says, "Oh, are you going to enter the pen?" Oh, hey, that's a good idea. Shit, I sold them all. So I see somebody over there that I sold one to. Hey, give me that thing. And they handed it to me and I entered it and it won. And so again, that project just kind of snowballed from there. All of a sudden, everybody was interested in this bolt action pen. There wasn't such a thing back then. If you wanted a pen, Alan Leishowitz made some pens. Tom Anderson made some pens. Somebody else made some pens. There wasn't a lot, but there was a couple of things around. And the demand for that just blew me away. I did end up doing a Kickstarter project on it to be able to fulfill that demand. And
that's crazy.
That just further with that snowball's just getting bigger and bigger. I was making decent money with the knives because by then I had won best tactical folder at Blade Show and the best utility knife here and, all kinds of awards. Like every time you win one of those awards, they don't seem like much, but they do bring customers with them and they do bring, some demand. So
good stuff happens.
Yeah, good stuff happens. At least enough to stay busy and always have customers for whatever you're making, providing you're not, like mass producing stuff. And I wasn't, so it was enough to keep me busy. And but then the gadget thing, the pen thing, just blew up. Yeah, and there was no meeting that demand. It's only 10 years I couldn't hardly meet the demand for those things.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it really is crazy. There's been a lot of pens made. A lot.
So Brian, that's what I didn't know until you just walked through it, was the timeline of the time you spent in Africa, that was after you were already doing this full time. And that was sort of a means to an end for funding the shop. Is that a fair way to say it?
Sort of. I wasn't really doing it full time.
Okay.
I had a job, and Christy and I moved and got married, and I was making the knives, but it was just in my garage when I got home from work.
Okay.
And a customer called one day, and he's like, "Are you looking for a job?" No. Oh, okay. But then hang on a second. I want to hear about this. And I knew that he worked overseas somehow. So I let him go through his spiel, and he was one of the big bosses of Chevron of the whole continent of Africa, and I didn't realize that. And he offered me stupid money to go over there, and I planned on just doing it one or two times because we only got to go a couple of times, and it was like we can pay off Christy's student loan debt from her nursing school, and pay off the car, and we'll be completely out of debt with just a couple of trips over there. And we ended up not doing any of that. She paid off her student loan debt herself. And we used the money to, like I say, buy machinery, get a Bridgeport, buy more grinders, build more grinders, all that sort of stuff, and sort of be able to finance my knife making endeavors. And I did that for 3 years. And then when I left there, I just never went back to work for anybody else. That's when I consider it. I went full time. I went full time in 2010.
Okay.
I haven't worked for anybody else since then.
Yeah. Yeah.
2007 was the last time I worked for anybody in the U.S. and 2010 the last time I worked for anybody anywhere.
Right. It's that pen thing. I don't know, it's some kind of perfect storm kind of situation, right? Right place, right time, right product. And
right product, right place, right time, everything about it. Just, you couldn't plan it. You couldn't do it again.
Yeah.
It worked.
So you had,
and you have to know it worked. Look at it out there now. I mean, there was no such thing now. Now there's a huge market.
Right.
There was no bolt action pens. I invented the bolt action pen. Now there's bolt action pens everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's disagreement about whether or not I invented the bolt action pen. And since we're on a podcast, that'll probably come up. And everybody's seen one somewhere when they were growing up.
Yeah.
Or
right.
this or that, or on base somewhere they had them. But no one, I've never yet, here we are 15 years later, nobody's ever produced any evidence of anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oddly enough, though, there is another guy, Max Madco.
Yep.
He and I did them at the same time. And he and I were friends, unrelated, from watch stuff. He was the guy that worked on Maritac watches.
Yeah.
And I had he put new loom and new stuff in a watch that I had. So he and I chatted back and forth, and he made stuff and I made stuff. So we just made friends. And when I made my first bolt action pen, I'm like, check it out. And I sent him a picture, and he's like, are you fucking kidding me? And he sends me a picture of his version, like literally at the same time. We're both working on it at the same time. I don't know what was in the zeitgeist what was in the air at that particular time. But it was going to produce bolt action pens, and it did.
I had one of his pens, and I think I found him the same way through watch stuff. Yeah. And I love that pen, man. I used that thing for a long, long time at work.
It's a neat pen. Yeah.
It's just very sleek. And the only problem I had with it was that it was kind of like a high finish satin. At least the one I had was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't satin lengthwise. It was satin around the barrel. And like, it was slippery. There was a bunch of different times I'm like, I'm going to mask this damn thing off and take it downstairs to the sandblast cabinet and put some stripes on it or something. So
skinny
I
and
get something to grip on. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But boy, that was a great pen. Well, what do you think of, so the Kickstarter thing, how did that even come to be?
Well, Kickstarter was new back then.
Yeah.
And it was, I saw the opportunity. I don't know who pointed it out to me, but somebody pointed it out, and I started investigating and looked at it, and it's like, hey, it's a pretty good opportunity. So I came up with a Kickstarter project and was all ready to launch it, and then somebody else launched a pen right when I was ready to do mine. And thank God they did. I don't remember who it was, because my video was like done with a webcam on top of the computer monitor, and it was not good. And they ran some stupid long thing. Like, if you with a Kickstarter project, you need to be in and out in less than a month. So all the money's made in the first 10 days and the last 4 days.
Yeah.
Anything more than that, it's just filler. It's people falling off. It's dead time. But they ran like some stupid long, like 2 month long thing. And I'm not going to put mine on while there's another pen going on there. So I went and found an actual like videographer and made a proper video. And that made the whole thing. That made the project as big as it ended up, and got me a lot of press and a lot of PR from that.
Yeah. How many pens did you make as part of the Kickstarter? Do you have any idea?
I don't remember, no. Hundreds, though.
I would say it's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And it would have been more, I mean, but they had me shut down. I did like a 3-week or a 4-week long project, and they decided that I violated one of their rules. So they shut me down and literally made it to where you couldn't even see me on there anymore. For weeks and weeks. And I had to get rid of all of these people that had bought this. I offered more than one pen is what it was. And you couldn't do that back then. You could sell one thing, but you couldn't sell multiples. This isn't a store. This is an investment people are making in you.
Yeah.
And now, while they had approved the thing to do, they decided somehow while I was in there that I'm violating their rules, and you have to make all these sales go away. However, they provided no mechanism to do that. I couldn't cancel them myself. You as the customer had to go and change your pledge, they called it. You had to change your pledge to something else. They also gave me no way to communicate that to you. I couldn't get your email address, your phone number, nothing. All I could do was communicate to you via their little messaging system on the website. So if you're like most people, you've done your thing and you don't go back to the website. You're not checking it. So I couldn't get people to cancel, or I'd get somebody to cancel, and when it would cancel, now there's an available one. So somebody else would buy it. I'm trying to get these 80 sales to go away. And it was a nightmare. Like I was literally up 22 hours a day refreshing the screen trying to get this shit to go away. So I probably lost $100,000 or something in sales the way it was trending over that. And in that time, the New York show happened. One of Delac's November shows, the show that would have been last weekend. And we all went to Katz's Delicatessen, and Katz's is right by where the Kickstarter headquarters is. So I'm like, awesome. I'm going to go beat on their door and try and explain to these people, because I'm telling them, like, I can't fix this. You're telling me I have to fix this problem, but I can't because you don't have a mechanism. And all I'm getting are canned responses. I don't think a real human seeing what's going on here. So I'm thinking I'm just going to go talk to a human and they'll sort it out.
Yeah.
And when I got there, it changed. They... or at least my perception of it changed. I now think they knew exactly what they were doing. And for some reason, we've mentioned a couple times already tonight that I might have a habit of making people mad and say, fuck you, Brian. Well, I get to the Kickstarter headquarters and, I try and go in, and literally like these freaking hipsters ran to the door and locked it. And pulled the blinds down, like, pretend no one's home, turn off the fucking lights.
Wow.
Like they're hiding from me. It was weird as shit, man.
Yeah.
So I'm not the biggest fan of them anymore. They cost me a bunch of money at that point in time, but by the same token, they also gave me a bunch of money and gave me a bunch of PR and led to where we're at.
Yeah.
And they've changed their model a whole bunch. I tried to put some knives on there when I came up with that the little friction folder with the bottle opener on it.
Yep.
I tried to do that at a Kickstarter project, but no, absolutely no knives.
Yeah.
No weapons. It's like, this isn't a weapon, man. I mean, you're going to cut yourself. You're never going to cut anybody else with this thing.
Right.
And those policies have all changed since then. So they're probably a lot easier to work with now. But yeah, they turned down the Fricky because of their no weapons policy. And maybe the people listening aren't familiar with my Fricky, but I think most of you guys are. It looks like a little freaking peanut with a bottle opener on the end of it. And it's blunt with a little straight edge. It's nothing intimidating or weapon-like about this thing.
Right.
I had actually forgotten all about that.
Yep. Yeah, they're cool little guys. For people at home that haven't seen one, it's probably about the size of your thumb, Brian. Maybe a smidge bigger.
Yeah.
And when it's friction folder, when it's closed, the bottle opener out the one end and spin it around and a little teeny tiny blade in there.
And even that came about as kind of a challenge. We were on the USN, and it was back before Warren Thomas became persona non grata in the knife world.
Yeah.
And he was making a bunch of friction folders, and everybody was. Friction folders were popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell, man? Why they all got these little dicks sticking out the end of them and it doesn't do anything? Make it a fucking bottle opener or something.
Right.
Oh, no, that'll never work. Blah, 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 blah. So I literally designed and built that thing overnight. And the next day is like, fuck you, it won't work. Here it is.
Yeah.
And I've sold thousands of those things since then.
Oh, yeah. It's a great price point thing and maybe a little fidgety thing. And it actually does stuff. And there's a lot to like about that little thing.
It fits in the coin pocket on your jeans.
Exactly. Yep.
It actually opens bottles. Yeah, it's a cool little knife.
And you can do it the way Birch likes. You just grab it by the dick, pull it out of your coin pocket, and you're off to the races.
I remember that was my thing on the USS. All these knives have this fucking dick sticking out the end of them. They don't do nothing, man. What the hell?
So, okay. So, it's funny you mentioned that. I pulled up my, my email, and Gmail has some pretty crazy, like it'll hold, email messages as far back as you have them kind of thing.
Right.
And so I searched Fellhoelter and there's 33 updates on the Tybolt project.
Is that what there was?
Yeah, because it was a long, drawn out process, right? Well, the thing I was going to ask is, so one of the cool things about a place like Kickstarter is you touch an audience that's potentially much broader than like
Yes.
just the USN, but the USN at the time was massive. So you had
It
a
was.
fantastic audience, but you're hitting a whole bunch of people that don't know anything about that world.
Yeah.
And do you think, even with all the hassle, that the Kickstarter reach had anything to do with the explosion of that whole pen project?
It absolutely did. Absolutely, yes. Like I said, it's a mixed bag. I curse them, but at the same token, they helped propel me to where I got. It's just what hurt my feelings, I guess, so to speak, if I have such things, is that it was like I did well on their site in spite of them, not because of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, they helped get me to where I am. There's no doubt. I mean, they put me in front of millions of people that would have never seen it otherwise. And yeah, there's most of those customers that came from there were not knife related. They weren't
Exactly.
EDC related of any sort. They were, well, that'd be a good thing to give my father-in-law. That'd be a good thing to give my husband, the doctor, the lawyer. They were entire and whole different world.
Straight up gadget people.
Yep.
Gadget people, and maybe at the time when Kickstarter was new, and I mean, there's so much stuff on Kickstarter today, but it was almost like this gadget, widget, weird stuff prospecting site, right?
Yes.
Like there was a lot of cool shit on Kickstarter, right?
Yes.
Like on all kinds of different directions.
Yes.
So yeah, you had
And they weren't big.
kind of a unique
like,
audience.
There's a lot of I don't want to say corporate, but there's a lot of big corporate type projects on there now that
Yeah.
they don't need Kickstarter. They're using Kickstarter as advertisement.
Right.
Back then, it really was like, I can't afford to make this thing,
Right.
but with your help, I can afford to make it.
Yeah.
And it's less. That's less so the case now.
Yeah. There's a lot of big projects that are using it for capital generation, basically.
Yeah,
up
yeah.
front. But-
Like Anchor. I mean, I bought a 3D printer off of one from the company Anchor.
Yeah.
Anchor's a huge company, man.
Right.
They didn't need Kickstarter to make their
Right.
make their 3D printer.
Yeah. All right. So that knives, pens, what was next in the line, the long line
Flashlights?
of different stuff?
Yeah, it's weird. I was thinking about that. And timelines, I'm terrible about timelines. Like what came first,
Yeah.
from A, how did you get from A to Z? I would mix that alphabet up every time. It might have been Labros. It might have been flashlights. It might have been yo-yos. And flashlights are a strange thing because I've been making things since I was a little kid. And by little kid, I mean like 4 or 5 years old, I started making weird things in my grandpa's shop. And the very first thing I ever remember making was a flashlight. And I was probably 5 years old. And I say a flashlight simply because there was a battery and a light bulb. But it was an old Boy Scout flashlight that had broken and it didn't work anymore. And at 5 years old, 6 years old, we're talking like probably 1979, I managed with a D-cell battery, a paper clip, and a light bulb out of a broken flashlight to make a light that I could read by in my tent while we were camping. So I've been making lights since then. My dad just gave me one back a year or so ago that I made him in probably 1993 or 94.
Yeah.
But commercially, yeah, they were one of the next things, whether they were next or just one of the next, I don't know. They were one of the next things that turned a profit.
What was the driver behind the flashlight thing, Brian? What got you doing that? Just like, hey, I did this before. I see what these other guys are doing. I can make something cool.
Yeah,
Is
that's
there
kind of
more
it.
Yeah.
It's not even that I see what other guys are doing, because I purposely don't look at what other guys are doing because I don't want to copy. So I might see what you're making when we're at a knife show. Like I'll pick up one of Tom's knives or Sean's knives or Birch's knives, and hey, this is really cool, and I'll enjoy the hell out of it, and I'll set it down, and tomorrow I could not describe that thing to you. So I purposely don't really look or pay attention to what other folks are doing. It's just kind of, maybe it enters my consciousness because I see people are doing it and they're making money and it's something I'm interested in. So I'll make one, and that's kind of how it just rolls into something I can turn into money. But I don't think it's a conscious decision.
Yeah.
That's why I trace around stuff when people aren't looking.
It's a good idea.
Tom's using the 3D scanner app on his phone.
Hell yeah.
He's taking
I'm going to say, they got to be, with all the lenses on the front of these iPhones and stuff now, they got to be able to be used as a scanner.
It's the glasses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's the glasses.
Just walk by tables at these shows and own everybody's shit.
I mean, that's what facial recognition on your phone basically does. So yeah, there's apps you can buy that use the LiDAR on your phone and the cameras, and they can create a rough 3D scan.
Yeah, I would assume that there's such thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the flashlights came about because literally I'd been making off and on, at some form or point, I'd been making flashlights for 30 years. So all of a sudden, hey, there's a flashlight market. Cool. And there's cool gadgets, and I can have a really cool light in my pocket. It's always kind of the big motivators.
Right.
Not some dim ass little mag light that, it lights things up sort of. But shit, I can light things up. So
I will say your bolt action light is one of the only lights I couldn't kill in the shop. They're great. I've got multiples.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the bolt action light. I wasn't even thinking about those. I was just thinking about the other flashlights.
You were thinking about tail clicker stuff.
Well, that's what I'm making today. I
Yeah.
spent today working on flashlight stuff.
Yeah, those bolt action lights are great.
Yeah. Again, I partnered with a company that's out of business. Sort of. 4.7s is sold, and another company's bought
Dark
it.
Sucks owns them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What? So, okay. I think the flashlight thing came after pens, at least
Definitely after pens, yeah.
whether it's in order or not. But yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you consider the flashlight stuff? You haven't done flashlights in the kind of volume that you've done pens over the years, obviously.
No, not in the same kind of volume, but a remarkable volume nonetheless.
Okay. So
I've
still
probably
very
done-
successful.
It's pretty successful, yeah. We've done 250 of them this year,
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
which is more than some probably flashlight makers, the people that, that's what they would tell you they do. That's probably more than some of them do in
Right.
several years.
Yep.
So it's I think my scale of what I consider successful or a lot is different than what other folks might consider
Yeah.
successful and a lot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I also make things, and I said I made 250 of them. That doesn't mean I sold 250 of them.
Right.
I mean, I made them.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, that's been a pretty successful project, and it's always something. I don't do it often enough, and they'll sell out. That if I ever end up like in a bind, or hey, I need to earn some money this week or this month or whatever's going on, that's one of those things I can. Well, I'll make a bunch of these and pay that bill or buy that thing or whatever.
Right.
It's always one of those things that I could pull out and, hey guys, look at what I've got, and sell a bunch of them real quick.
Talk about the building block thing and how that happened.
Oh, the Labros.
Labros.
The Labros. That was another odd thing. Always played with them growing up. I've still got the box of them that was in a shoebox that my dad and uncles played with when they were little, that I ended up playing with when I was little, that my kids now play with when they're little. So they've always been something that was in my life. And I was literally, I had a drawing I'd just taken I'm going to reverse engineer one of these things. So I'd been working on that, and Paulie from New Jersey calls me one day, and he's like, he mentioned them, like, man, you know what I think would be cool? And Labros, but not Labros. It's like, well, interesting that you would say that. I've actually been working on a drawing, and I never thought of it. Was, again, like, I'm going to make a couple of these things. When I'm going to make 100 of them or 1,000 of them. I want to make a couple, just even if it's just for background stuff or in pictures. I've got a bunch of things that I've only ever made, and you'll only ever see them in the background of pictures. But as soon as somebody else brings it up and it's something I'm working on, well, now all of a sudden maybe we want to ramp that up and make a few more, or spend a couple dollars and buy some fancy materials.
Yeah.
And I did that, and yeah, that one took off. That was crazy. We sold, I don't know how many of those, but we sold a remarkable amount in a short time.
Yeah.
And any show we go to, I always take a few. You know, I don't go heavy with them like I used to. I used to go with I might take 500 Legos to a show. Now I'll only take 40.
Right.
But you sell some every time. And if I forget to bring them, then I have 40 people ask me,
right.
You have any of those things? You have any of those? Damn it. Like this Kentucky show that's coming up. It's a small show. It's only a few hours. I go with a little Pelican case. I can't take 10% of the things that I make there. There's just not the time to lay it all out and pack it all up. So whatever it is I don't bring is going to be the thing that everybody wants.
Yep.
And that'll probably be those building blocks.
How it goes.
Yeah.
That's the Murphy's Law thing.
And then you'll think like, no, I'm not going to make them out of, who would pay for okutai, or who would pay for zirconium, you know?
Right.
All of a sudden this little thing is $300 or $250 or whatever the heck the price is going to be on them. No one's going to do that. So I'll invest a little bit of money and make 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 of them. And then all of a sudden there's demand for 100 of them.
Right.
But the way I work is in projects. I can't just start like, oh, well, there's a demand, I'm going to make another 20 of those. It doesn't work that way. It takes me a week to start a project and get it running right. I can't work in little things like that. I can't just go and make 10 of those. I mean, I can, but it angers me and frustrates me. So I don't do it.
Yeah. So I have questions about that aspect of things, but let's talk yo-yos, because that's the other one I had written down. That was kind of that's a more recent project, and we talked about it at in that little video or audio clip we recorded from the Pacific show. But talk a little bit about yo-yos and how that came about, and that's got its own complete subculture of its own too.
It does. And I'm learning more about them now. This is my second foray into yo-yos. Yo-yos came about simply because I bought a lathe. When I first started making the tie bolts and everything, all I had was this crappy little old 1940s out of the Montgomery Ward catalog lathe. And I bought myself a CNC lathe once the tie bolts really started making money, so I could make parts for them. And, well, what else am I going to do with this thing? And I came up on a deal on some 2-inch titanium that was just, I bought it at 10 cents on the dollar. I bought it simply because, hell, in 5 years, I can sell it for 50 cents on the dollar and turn a hell of a profit. Right. But I've got a whole bunch of this material sitting here. What can I make out of it? A yo-yo. So we made some yo-yos, and hey, there's titanium yo-yos out there, and hey, they get $300 or $400 for them. So I'll make some. That'll be cool. And there was a big yo-yo company in Phoenix, and we were living in Arizona at that time, and we were going to Phoenix. So I'll take this and show it off to these guys and get their opinion. And they loved it. So that kind of fed my ego, I guess, or at least gave me, confidence I was going along the right path. And so I decided to try and sell them, and then I quickly discovered that who's the customers for yo-yos? Well, it's kids. Kids don't have $400.
Right.
Not only do they not have $400, they all have opinions on what you're doing wrong. And that was really, really annoying. So yeah, I made one batch of yo-yos and didn't go back for, 10 years.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of the same thing. I still have that material sitting here, literally I've got like 60 foot of that 2-inch material sitting here. What was I going to do with it? Well, let's make some yo-yos. And now this time though, I went about it a little different. I don't care about the yo-yo people. When I was making them before, I was kind of making them for the yo-yo people. This go around, I figured, well, I've got enough of a customer base that some of them just buy something just because I made it, whether they want it or not. It doesn't matter. Brian made it. I'm going to buy it.
Right.
And, God bless them. I love them. And fortunately, I think I tend to make pretty cool stuff, and I do it fairly well. So you're never going to throw money at me and end up with a piece of junk in your pocket.
Right.
So I started making them, for my customers, not my existing customers, not for the yo-yo people. And, but I ended up getting introduced to a guy that's a national champion yo-yoer, Neil Kuntz, and sent him one. And he's like, dude, this thing is awesome. Here, change it a little here, change it a little there. And so I went back and forth with him a bit. And now he's got one that he's using in competitions and he's using in showcases. And I mean, he does like professional shows. Like he lives in Orlando and does 2 or 3 yo-yo shows a week, like at Disney and all these different things. And he's using my stuff now.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So I've got my customers who bought a bunch of them with these little pre-orders and stuff that I've done. And also he hyped me up in the yo-yo community, and he's someone of some renown. So it turns out there are, just like in all of the stuff that we do, all this EDC knives and all this stuff, there's people with deep pockets in there. And so all those guys have taken interest. And so I'm actually selling them in both worlds now. I'm selling them to the yo-yo guys, and I'm selling them to just the random guys that I sell everything else to.
Right. Right. And again, we talked about this a little bit in the Pacific chat, but there's like I was confused at the time. There's a module in the yo-yo, like it's basically the axle assembly in the center, right?
Yeah.
And somehow you're involved in that piece too.
Yeah. Well, most modern yo-yos actually use a bearing.
Yep.
So they'll spin forever, and that's how these guys can do these tricks. And if you've never looked at or like Googled or gone to YouTube and looked at yo-yo tricks, modern yo-yo tricks they're fucking incredible, man. The things these guys are doing are amazing. And it's because of the ball bearing. So these yo-yos will just spin forever, and then they can flip it around and regenerate, get RPMs going again without ever making it stop. And but unfortunately, because of that, I can't make one of those yo-yos come back. And I could do tricks growing up. I had Duncans, and I could do things with a yo-yo. And you hand me a modern yo-yo, I can't even make the sucker come back to my hand. So I made a fixed axle one, but I made a modification. I made a thing that I can drop into one of those ball bearing yo-yos and turn it into a fixed axle. And then I can get it to come back.
Yeah.
And while all that was going on, I made friends with a guy that owns a company called One Drop Yo-Yos that's there in the Pacific Northwest. They're there in Oregon, and they have their own axle system. And what we call axles and the yo-yo people call axles are different things. It's weird, but
yeah,
they have this system of this little part that pops in and out, so you can put in different ones. It's like bling your yo-yo,
right?
But it's not just bling. You can change your weight. You can change, which changes your balance and a bunch of different aspects of it. And I made friends with them, and they licensed their tech to me to be able to use in my yo-yo. And they did that because I wanted them to make some for me, but they don't make them out of titanium. Nope, don't want to do it. No interest. Well, I can't buy your fucking aluminum ones and put them in my titanium yo-yo that I want $400 for.
Right.
So, well, you make them yourself, and make some for us too. So it's worked out. I make them for them, and they sell them, and because of that, I've got it licensed, and I can do it myself.
Yeah.
For myself. They're called side effects.
Okay.
And they're pretty neat. Like I say, it's a real neat little system where you can just pop them in and out and change the way they look. And the world we're in, man, you can anodize, and I'm making things out of titanium. You can have one that looks like a Hershey Kiss and is anodized this color, and along with a yo-yo that's anodized somewhere different, you send them out to one of the modders and have it tweaked and made custom and one of a kind. It's your very own thing that nobody else in the world has.
Yeah, definitely. I've said this to people a bunch of times over the years, and kind of getting involved in different stuff, you figure out or realize it does not matter what it is. Somebody somewhere, like anything on my desk, somebody somewhere, like their entire life revolves around whatever that is, right? Like,
Right.
it's unbelievable, right? Like, just like we travel to knife shows and stuff, right? There's like yo-yo freaks that do yo-yo things, and
Oh yeah.
right. I mean, I was into flashlights before I came to knives again, right? And it's like,
Right.
and the pen people are their own little separate world, and I don't know. It's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, and every little world of those that I end up dipping a toe into, there's always somebody that's like, because we'll use the word famous, but I made my name with knives. I mean, it was just knives for the first bunch of years. I made my name in knives, but then all of a sudden, you make a yo-yo or a flashlight or this. Now you're on a different forum. You're in a different place. But somebody's like, oh man, I know Brian from, he makes great knives. And somebody, It's like you've already got somebody there vouching for you, because there's a little bit of overlap somewhere, everywhere with all these
Yes.
weird things that we all geek out on.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of amazing. So I know when you were doing the pen thing, it wasn't just, oh, I'm going to set up and make pens, right? Like they're doing the whole thin wall in a solid piece of material. Like you had to develop process to do that stuff,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about that and what that was like, kind of going through that.
I probably spent time reinventing the wheel that I didn't need to.
Yeah.
When you get down to it.
Yeah.
I needed what's a relatively long hole, 15 or 20 times its diameter in length through materials that don't like to be drilled. I mean, titanium and zirconium and these things, and mokutai and zircutai and all this stuff. So, I had to come up with ways to be able to drill them and turn them into tubing. Titanium, I just had titanium tubing made, and that took a while. I had to go through a bunch of different vendors and a bunch of different stuff to finally get to where somebody can make me titanium tubing, so that we're not having to drill that hole, 5 inches through a thing, and not wasting all that material and all that time and all that stuff. So now I'm able to buy some of that stuff. Well, only the titanium. I'm able to buy titanium tubing. And if you'll notice, there's a bunch of other guys that have the same format as my pen. And that's because that titanium tubing now exists, because I figured out how to get the freaking titanium tubing made. And I say it wasn't me. It was just me going to Titanium Joe and George at AMX and saying, hey, talk to your titanium suppliers and get somebody to make it to this specification. And they'd try, and we'd get an order in, and it would fail. It wouldn't work. So we'd go to a different vendor until we finally found somebody that was able to consistently produce what we need.
Yeah.
And then it's just, now it's, I want a superconductor pen. Well, shit, how on earth do you drill a hole 5 inches long through a piece of superconductor,
Right.
So you got to figure out ways to do it.
Yeah.
And I throw more of it away than I would like. I mean, just last week I was making mokame with Mike Sackmar's mokame, and he makes the best damn mokame that you can get.
Right.
And still, though, no fault of the material, the fault of me trying to figure out how to do it. And I've been making them out of mokame for 10 years. This batch will work just fine, and the next batch you put them in the lathe, and it wants to crush it. Your drill's a little duller or something, so all of a sudden that changes the forces that the material's seeing on the chuck in the lathe, and it works like an impact gun.
Yeah.
Mokame being soft materials and hard materials, it's literally like a million little impacts as it's spinning around in the lathe. And now the lathe is crushing them. So you pull the damn thing out, you think everything went well, and you pull it out, and all your hard work is scrap because it crushed it.
Yeah.
And I made 6 of them last week, and 4 out of the 6 came out right.
Wow.
And that sucks, because that material's expensive as shit. I mean, it's all handmade.
Yeah. Right. He actually lives nearby me. He's down the road.
Does he? Mike's a good dude, man. I like him.
Yeah. And it's pretty stuff.
It's really pretty stuff.
So-
He does a good job of it.
Yeah, when you think about a drill or a tool in there trying to cut that, it's almost like an interrupted cut, right? Because of the difference in the hardness of the material. Yeah, with the pattern.
It's not a legitimate interrupted cut, but it behaves like an interrupted cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
with a lot of interruptions because there's a lot of layers in there.
Right. And depending on the pattern, not necessarily a consistent interruption, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's why I try to liken it to, it's like an impact gun. It's like running a drill and an impact driver instead of in a regular driver. It's brutal on stuff.
Yeah.
And with like I say, with the Mokame, I'm holding it in a collet, which a lot of people won't know what that means, but it's a hydraulic device in the lathe that's squeezing all the way around that piece of material.
Yeah.
So if you're squeezing and I turn that pressure, you got to dial the pressure. You want to have enough to hold it so that it doesn't slip and screw anything up. But if you go too much with the Mokame, for example, it'll crush it. It'll squeeze it and it'll squish it because it's brass and copper and they're soft.
Yeah.
You can get that balance just right and it'll be right 10 times in a row. But then the next one, the drill dulled a little bit and that impacts a little bit more. And well, the impacting on something that's being squeezed and it allows it to squeeze a little bit more. And next thing you know, shit's crushed.
Right. Yeah.
So why are those so expensive, Brian? It's like, well, 'cause I threw away 80% of the freaking material trying to make them.
Right.
You got to pay for all 80%. You got to pay for 100%.
Exactly.
It's actually interesting on those high dollar ones. And those kind of things they're high dollar. I mean, you're spending a lot of damn money on a ballpoint pen. I don't make any money on those on account of that.
Right.
They're the kind of like loss leaders. They get all that interest and they get the eyes on you, but they're not the ones that pay the bills. The ones that pay the bills are the $150 ones.
Yeah.
The copper ones, those are your favorite.
Yeah, I actually like making copper. It's fallen out of favor though, man. That people aren't buying copper anymore.
I've got a few. I like them.
Yeah. Same with I made copper yo-yos, flashlights. I mean, copper yo-yo is just stupid. It weighs 3 times what it should weigh to actually function well.
Kill some.
But there was such demand for copper for so long that if I'm making something, I'm going to make it out of copper as well because people want copper.
Right.
Now all of a sudden they don't.
Huh.
They're wrong. They still want copper.
Tom has spoken.
I'm with you. And now instead of brass, because brass was the same thing, now instead of brass, I use bronze because it sounds cooler.
Right.
They look exactly the same. They behave exactly the same. They feel exactly the same. But it's bronze. It's not brass.
Yeah. So one of the differences, I think, we've had a bunch of different people on the show. And we've had, I think, a couple makers who've had that sort of step function in their timeline, right? Like where they go from 0 to on the map in a huge hurry. And lots of other people who have taken the really long path, right? A much slower build on all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we've had people that are more craftspeople and people that are more machine shop kind of people, right? Marsh is a mold maker guy too. And so in your case, there's differences in the way you might approach the work versus some other people. And you've kind of talked a little bit about it as we went along, right? About doing stuff in batches or, your batching processes together. Maybe can you talk a little bit about for you what that looks like if you're gonna, it's time to make a group of pens or flashlights or yo-yos, or it's like not worth setting up unless you're doing a decent number, right?
Right. Like today, I spent better part of half a day just setting up my lathe to do the second operation on the flashlight, on the tailstock, just the end where the switch goes. This is a normal, not a bolt action flashlight, just a tail clicky switch flashlight. I spent 4 hours getting the machine set up and dialed in and everything in place to be able to do that. So I don't want to do that. And that's just one of 4 operations that I need to do to make a flashlight before it goes to the mill. And the mill's 2 more. So there's 6 operations for me to make flashlights without a pocket clip. If each one of those takes half a day, that's 3 days worth of just setup time. I'm obviously, I can't make any money doing that if I'm only going to make 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 of them, so I have to be able to try and amortize that time into more parts. So I try and make it to where it'll be profitable. This particular batch, just to give you an example, I set up and I'm making 64 or 68 flashlights. for this one setup. And I probably wouldn't have done it to only make that amount of parts, but I've got one of my dealers that really wanted some in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
And they offered me enough money to make it worth my while.
Right.
So I've set up, and that was just the material I had on hand. Normally, if I was doing a flashlight project like that, I would spend a few months getting ready. You know, I'd have Chad make me some Mokutai and maybe some Zircutai, and maybe we'd try and find some superconductor, and I'd get Sakmar to make some Mokame. So I'd have all these different materials in, so that I could build a variety of them, because I'm only going to do that once this year. I'm going to set up and make flashlights once this year, because it's going to take 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of making flashlights. If I'm going to spend half a day or a day setting up, I want it to then run for 3 or 4 or 5 days before I change that to something else.
Yeah.
And it's completely different back when I ran manual machines. When I ran manual machines, like when I came up with the bolt action pen, I didn't have any CNC back then. There's no real setup time. You just kind of walk up and start doing it.
Right.
You know, so I could walk up and make one. It's no big deal. Now, I could be more efficient making 10, but I wouldn't even want to make 100.
Right. So do you think
the time savings weren't as huge when you're conventionally doing them as they are with CNC? The efficiency that you gain from it is in the long run. It's not in the immediate. I could make a knife for you with you know, the bandsaw and the grinders faster than I can on CNC. But a knife. But if we want to make 10 of them, I'll make them faster on the CNC.
Yeah. So a big piece of what you got to deal with day to day is basically project management, right?
Yeah.
Lining projects up. There's all kinds of stuff has to overlap, right? You got materials coming in for project A and you're working on an operation for project B. How are you keeping all that straight? Is that all Brian's got it in his head, or you tracking this stuff somehow, or what's your method?
I'm a mess, man. Seriously, because I'm not a businessman. I like to pretend to be, and you know, I've been in business for myself for I guess 15 years now, but that's not where my instincts are. So no, I'm not as organized as I could be. We'd be much better, probably more profitable and more efficient if I had somebody with some sort of business acumen, keeping track of that stuff. For me, it's like, I have to do all those things, and I do all those things, but it's not my nature. So there's no real good efficiency or real good system on it. I just start thinking like, I'm going to make flashlights later at the end of this year. So I start ordering material, and hopefully I think about it early enough that everything's there when the bug finally hits me. Like, hey, now it's time to make flashlights. Hopefully I've got all the stuff there already by then.
Right.
Because otherwise then it's last minute ordering and overnighting tools and things like that. And that always happens. It's happened this week, but I don't have a good overarching system. And I find, I'm betting Birch is probably the same way, and I bet all you guys are probably that way after a fashion, where you're just kind of, we've all done it long enough now that we have sort of a system that sort of works,
right?
But it could all definitely be better.
Yeah,
100% could be better.
Yeah, I mean, if we were business people or just had a business manager, It would work better, but then that kind of starts to sound like boss, and fuck that.
It does.
Boss. I'm unemployable. Yeah. But having like a shop manager or something like that would, I could probably actually make real money.
Yeah,
if I had somebody with some business sense around me.
Right.
Nah. Once again, follow your whimsy.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, we're all artists at heart, so we're trying to be artists or craftsmen, or however you want to phrase that, whatever the whimsy aspect of it. That's who all of us are, man.
Yeah.
But in order to make that work and to feed the kids, and every one of us has got them. Some of yours are all grown now, and some of us they aren't. But in order to keep food in their mouths and roofs over their head and clothes on their back and all that stuff, you got to be able to turn that whimsy and that stuff into at least some sort of semi-consistent income coming in to keep the whole thing rolling.
We do, but I think sometimes we get too caught up in, or it's easy to try to get caught up into like, oh, it could be more. It could be more. When, I mean, we really need to feed our kids and put that roof over their head. Other than that, the rest is, I don't know, just extra shit.
I
Right.
probably don't need to eat more. I got a whole box of Cheez-Its here and I need to stop.
You should probably pump the brakes, Tom.
I know.
I've gotten a lot better at, I'd say time management, but it's not necessarily time management. I don't know that I'm managing it any better. But I'm better at walking away from it rather than just spending all day and all night dwelling on, I've got to make this thing and I've got to get this better. Nope. 6:00, time to go home.
Yeah.
And I go home. And when we moved out here, I built my shop 1.5 miles away from my house. I bought a house. I got 10 acres. I could have easily built my shop on my property with my house. But I didn't. It's on the same street, but it's 1.5 miles away. So at the end of the day, I lock the door and go home. And I'm not going to lie. I still, often do computer things or drawing or whatever when I'm at home, but not like I used to. It used to just be when the shop was at the house. I was just always at work. Any time I spent with the family was basically peeling time away from work to go spend some time with the family. Now it's not that way. I'm a lot more family oriented, or at least time wise, my time is dedicated a lot more to being with the family than it used to be.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it's the way it should be.
Right.
Yeah. Finding the balance is a tricky business. Or
Yeah,
can be.
that's a tough bit, especially when you're just trying to make a name or trying to get some money in. Once you, I guess, establish yourself, it probably becomes a little bit easier. So we're probably all a little bit fortunate there.
Yeah.
There's no balance.
Thomas-
It's very hard.
No.
Thomas-
It's so hard,
It is
What's
very
in those goddamn Cheez-Its?
Yeah.
right?
Cocaine
You know what I'm
Cheez-Its
saying,
is
though.
what
I mean, my kids are almost all grown, but I mean, it's so hard when you have little kids and not even little, but more like Birch's and your age kids, Brian. It's like,
Yeah, I got an 11 and a 15-year-old.
yeah, it's like,
Hey, same. Almost.
it's tough.
Yep.
Yeah, I found out the hard way about soccer season. That was long.
And the bullshit that goes with everybody thinking you're self-employed and what actually self-employed looks like.
Right.
It's like, oh, you're self-employed. You can drive for school. You're self-employed. You can take off
Right.
whenever you want.
Yeah, you don't have to ask the boss. You can just go and do this thing.
And you can do all those things, but you have to make that time up. And
You do.
there's no
You do,
40-hour weeks in our business, period.
No, there's not, and there can't be.
So, yeah, I've never seen a 40-hour week. That, I mean, obviously I have when I haven't worked days, but if you work a full
Right.
week, it's not
Right.
40.
Right. No, not with any consistency.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Even now, I do mostly 10-hour days, but it used to be anywhere from 10 to 16. But by the same token, if I need to go to the doctor or whatever tomorrow, I can do
Whenever,
that. Yeah. And the same with school. Like, fortunately for me, my kids aren't really into like soccer for Birch and some of those things. God, they're huge time sucks.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you don't want to miss it because that's core memories your kids are making. You want to be there to be part of that.
And it's going to be gone soon. I mean, we got 4 years of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you're done. I got all
my
the
kids
fucking
in
time in the world
my
to
kids in
work
band,
for
so
that.
I go to all the home games and watch, but I can't go to all of them. I can't take off for 3 hours on every Friday to go watch you play in Timbuktu somewhere. When I don't want to say just the band, but it's the band. You're not out on the field. It's the same music you're going to play next Friday at the home game. I'll watch it then.
Yeah.
If they were in soccer, God, you might have 2 games a week or practice and this and that, and you're the self-employed one, so you're the one that can drive, and you're the one that can coach, and you're the one that can go pick this thing up, and you're the one that can go do that thing.
Nah, I don't mind it. It would. I don't know. I'll find the time later.
Looking back, I
Right,
miss
well,
that time.
Yeah.
But
I'm a lot better at it now than I was. That's kind of what I was getting at. It used to be I wouldn't have had time for any of that. Whereas since we've moved out here and the shop's out, I'm able to make it to games. I'm able to do this, but also only because they're a bit limited. If they were really like some people, I mean, they've got 6 different extracurriculars. You can't do that. Well, my kids also go to private school, so I have to earn the money to pay for that school. So to pay for, to earn that money, I have to be at work. So I'm going to have to miss something, or else we won't be able to pay for the school.
Yep.
I'm with you on that one too.
Yeah. Mississippi here is like ranked 49 out of 50, I think, in public schooling. And our community is the bottom 1% in my state. So the kids have to go to private school.
Yeah.
They moved up.
Man, speaking of Mississippi, tell us how the move went and tell us why you moved there.
Well, the move went good. And the reason I ended up here is because it's about as far away as you can get from California before you start getting too close to New York.
You're being repelled by both coasts.
No, I had friends and people that I know here. And so it was kind of a ready built being able to drop into a little bit of a support system. We knew we needed to move, and it's where we're going to go. And you could just pick some random place and where you know absolutely nobody, or pick some place where you do know some people. And, you know, I've got Bubba lives next door to me here. Jim Burke lives just up the road. Chad and Les are just up the state a little bit, you know, so there's people around and people that I know around. And, we like being able to have a deer camp and hunt, and a beer camp in the summer where we go and play on the river, and all these different things that we can do right from home. I mean, I bought a house on 10 acres for the same money that I sold my house in Arizona on 1/8 of an acre for.
Right.
Wow.
And it's much more house with a swimming pool, and a creek runs through it, and all kinds of, you know, old hardwoods, and again, 10 acres. And another acre down the street, all for the same money that I was spending in the West for 1/8 of an acre.
Yeah.
It really came down to stuff had blown up so big, and I needed more space in Arizona. And I had already moved out of my house and was renting industrial space, and I outgrew it. So I need bigger space, and there was nothing to buy. Well, there was, but anything that I could buy out there was going to be $500,000 to $1 million for not much bigger than what I already had for, you know, 2,500 square feet, 3,000 square feet on a tiny little piece of land, or part of a strip mall type industrial building. But out here, I was able to buy an acre to put my shop on and build a 7,000 square foot shop that's built to my specs. You know, I built it the way I want, laid out the way I want, and be able to do all that for, you know, a couple $100,000 rather than $1 million. So we were able to move out here and do all this. And the only debt we have is the mortgage on the house. Everything else we own. We own the shop. We own all the equipment in the shop. We own the vehicles. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have debt.
Right.
And we couldn't be debt free really anywhere else. I mean, sure, we could pick somewhere else. I could go Kentucky or Tennessee, but not anywhere where we also had people.
Yeah.
You know, there's other places where the expenses are similar, but we chose this place because knowing the people. And we vacationed out here. I took the family around and vacationed, and honestly, this is where we ended up isn't where I expected them to love the most. I expected them to like it a little further north, up Tennessee or up by Chad and Les, and they liked it down here better. So this is where we ended up.
Yeah. What about the move of the shop itself?
Sucks.
I was going to say, every time that comes up with somebody, it's like, oh, what a motherfucker the move was.
Yeah.
It seems like maybe it takes it adds another dimension of stress, but there's got to be some upside in the fact that what you're moving into is a shop that you got to spec out yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. There was
That's
all
the
huge
carrot,
upsides
right?
moving out here. Yeah. Yeah. But the physically doing it sucks.
Yeah.
especially when I had just done it, like 2 years earlier. And
Right.
I mean, I've been in this shop now. This is the longest I've ever been in a shop, and I've been in this shop 6 years.
Yeah.
We built it and finished it out 6 years ago. And other than that, before that, I was averaging like a year and a half, 2 years, and having to move and having to move and having to move. I started in my uncle's garage. We left my uncle's garage, went from there to a shop up by Lake Isabella, which is where I did the whitewater rafting, and Christy's family was. So we went up there when she got pregnant, or we were getting married, and I was getting ready to go overseas. Let's be near her family. Went up there and moved from there to Arizona. From Arizona, I outgrew that shop into a garage. So every 2 years, I was outgrowing where we were at.
Yeah.
And so I had to build this huge shop. And already, even right now, 6 years later, I wish it was bigger.
That's the problem. It's like, it seemed like every 5 to 6 years, you start realizing you didn't know what you should have known back then when you built something or did something. You're like, well,
Right.
shit. And it's like, and we've been doing this a long time. We should know by
Yeah,
now.
it's been a while. Yeah,
But we learn new things that we don't know.
absolutely.
And these cycles that are like, fuck, I wish I would have done this or that, or added this or that, or
Yeah. Part of my problem is I'm a huge slob. And so I just need more places to set bullshit down and forget about it and walk away from, and more storage spaces. There's never enough warehouse room, to put stuff up on a shelf to forget about for 5 years till you need it again.
mm-hmm.
And enough walls to put that new little thing you invent, or that new little spot where you're going to do this thing, and you don't want to just have it in the middle of the floor somewhere. It's got to be up against a wall, right? So you start running out of wall space where you're going to put a grinder or a buffer or a press or a printing press or a 3D printer or whatever. You just start running out of places to put it. I've still got tons of actual center of the shop floor space left, but not a lot of perimeter left.
Yeah, and they keep inventing new knife shit that we quote unquote need.
Right. And some of that I'm guilty of. I mean, some of you guys probably have, like lock fixture grinders that I've made or fucking pocket clip benders. I saw Burnley just did a video showing off one of my pocket clip benders a week or so ago on Instagram or something.
Yep.
So there's always new shit, man. And you got to have it. How did you ever live without it?
What's your favorite part about being a guy that makes stuff, Brian? What's the best part for you?
The best part is that first article, man. That first thing when I pictured something in my head and I pictured it in my head, and now here it is. I'm holding it.
Yeah.
That initial, just here it is. This is the coolest damn thing. And it might be nothing. It might just, I hand it to you and it's just what the fuck? It's a ballpoint pen, Brian.
Right.
But to me, it was all, the details that are inside of it and the idea of how this is going to work and that, and finally seeing it all come together and all come to fruition. That initial, that literally the first article, man, the first one that's right of whatever that thing is. And it could be nothing. I mean, it could be a doorstop. I just made that coolest doorstop that ever existed. This fucking cool doorstop.
Right.
That part. I never get over that part. That's why there's always so many different new things. And I've probably got, I don't even know, there's literally thousands of SKUs. If we were to put SKUs on all the things I make, there's well over 1,000.
Yeah.
And it's all chasing that little endorphin rush you get from that new thing, that cool thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's one really consistent thing, is the whole short attention span theater kind of scene.
Yeah.
With makers.
Yeah. That's a tricky part too when you want to go and make money.
Right.
Really, because making the pen is cool, or making this thing is cool. That's going to make money, but I don't enjoy the 200th one or the 300th one or the 500th one like you do the first one.
Right.
All of a sudden now it's work.
Yeah.
I think that may be a superpower I have, or maybe I'm just not very exciting. I'm boring.
It is absolutely a superpower you have. I've seen you show up to shows and unroll how many freaking knives you've grinded in the last 2 months since I saw you last. It's ridiculous,
I just don't
man.
mind making the same thing again. I mean, it was cool the first time I made it. It's cool the 50th time I made it.
I envy that so much.
Me too.
About the third time I make something, I'm like, oh fuck.
I mean, right now I'm doing the signature series alpha. There's 50 of them exactly the same, and I'm like literally in my 40s right now. I'm almost finished with this project, and I wasn't sure I was going to like it. And it's been really enjoyable. It's one less thing I have to think about. I just come in and make them, and it's
Right.
been fun.
Right. And every now and then that does strike me. Like I've got a project on my bench over here with a collaboration with Fellhoelter, and I've got like, I don't know, 60 of these knives, something like that, sitting here that I need to finish. And I'm dreading going back to it. They've been sitting there for 8 or 9 months, and they're almost done. I mean, they're literally like, I need to do a little tweaking and put them together. They're almost done. And I enjoyed making them so much. The second one as much as the 40th one, as much as the 50th one. But now that I have to go back to it, I've been dreading it. It's just been sitting there gathering dust. I can't force myself to. It's like I can't force myself to pick it up and do it again, even though while I was doing it, I enjoyed it.
I get that.
I get that quite a bit, where it's just so close to the end. You're just like,
Yeah.
you just don't even want to look at it. I don't know
Right.
why.
The problem with this one is that I made it to the end and then discovered that we need to tweak something. So
Yeah.
it was done and it was over, and I was proud and I was happy and I had all those feelings. And now you want me to fucking touch them again?
Yeah.
I gotta make it
You
twice.
get all those feelings again, Brian.
Right.
And I might get them again if I can make myself get back to it. But I don't think I will. So I'm dreading going back to it.
But I think sometimes it's also a thing of then it's gone. You know, if you actually go and do that and they
Right.
go away, then that
There's
thing
that
that you
too.
took joy from is gone.
Yes. Yeah. There is that as well. There's certain things that are sitting around because once I do them, they won't be sitting around anymore. And I
Yeah.
kind of like it sitting around.
Yep.
So complicated.
It's called mental
Complicated
health
creatures, Mark.
issues.
Yes, I understand. I understand. All right, fun question time. Birch is a fun question guy.
Oh,
Yeah, I got what kind of hair product do you recommend? not for us.
Oh,
I would
got
say
this,
there's
Brian.
irony in
I
that
got-
question.
I've got about as much hair as you do right now, Birch.
Yeah, when you cut it off, I thought that was just I don't know.
I did it to spite you.
Oh.
I knew
Look
that it
what I
would
can
hurt your
do.
soul. I knew it would hurt your soul a little bit to see that magnificent mane just go away.
Yeah, I mean, you could have sent it to me or something, I guess.
I sent it to cancer kids, man. I went and had it cut off so that it could go to the wig makers.
Some little 12-year-old's going to be all gray and be like, what the hell?
No, they say they dye it because that was my question too.
That is a
Yeah.
good question.
It was a question, and they loved mine because you brought up product. My product was shampoo. I mean, not even like good shampoo. I use freaking Suave or whatever the hell you get for $3 a gallon. But they love that. There was no product in it. There's no, like, it hasn't been blow dried. It hasn't been abused in any fashion. It was just wash and go, you know?
You find out that coolant mist is like the best thing for hair.
It had plenty of that in it, yeah.
So for folks who haven't seen a picture of Brian, well, I guess maybe not recent history is the right way to say it, but relatively recent history at the Pacific Show, which you got your hair cut off not too long after that, right? It wasn't that long ago.
just a couple weeks after, yeah.
Yeah. Brian had a pretty glorious Nick Rossi-esque mane
Oh, yeah.
going. Did you have more length than Nick Rossi?
I think I did.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because it's curly enough that it pulls up. I think when it's wet, that mine would have been longer.
Yeah.
Him and Stuart Ashner, we all took pictures together too.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, you and
I
Nick
had
in the
to.
picture, it's like my eyes get blurry. I can't really actually tell which has the longer hair. You get distracted.
You might have taken the one picture on the side of the on the beach that night, actually.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
And yeah, I'm not. I've never had hair. Like everybody's, I've never seen you with hair this long before. It's like nobody's ever seen me with hair this long before.
Yeah.
I never had hair that I could pull down into my eyes my whole life. I'm 52, however the hell old I am, 51. Yeah, 51 now. I've literally never had hair. It's always been shaved. It was long enough to comb a couple times, like high school era, the 80s and early 90s. But since I turned 17, 18 years old, it's been shaved always, forever. So all of a sudden to have 2 years worth of growth, I mean, I had like 13 inches, 14 inches of hair.
Right.
That was a lot.
Yep.
And yeah, now I'm back to shave it.
You guys got another fun question?
What's your favorite movie knife?
My favorite movie knife.
Yeah.
We did a whole episode about movie knives once upon a time.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've listened to all of them. You told us that before.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
It was a long time ago. You might have forgot about it.
My favorite movie knife probably it would have to be probably the Rambo knife from the first Rambo, not First Blood, and not even necessarily so much for what the knife was in the movie, but from reading all the books growing up. And in the book, the knife is its own thing that, he forges and does this and does that. And there was a whole mythos behind the knife and, it's part Indian. And there was just all kinds of bullshit went behind the making this fucking knife. So that would make it my favorite probably simply because of that aspect of it. Combined with now there it is in the movie. And the one in the movie is not exactly what was described in the book, but
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't end quite like the book either.
No. Well, First Blood, he died in the book.
That's
hard
to do a sequel.
Yeah. And it's great too in the book. The lead in on the book is like, well, in my book, First Blood, Rambo died. In the movies, he lived. And that was the whole thing. That was it.
Yeah.
That's the lead in. Now I think if we're going to pick my favorite movie knife, I have to go with the one that what's his name shaves himself with in Predator when he's sitting there shaving.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, the crane?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Couldn't pick it out of a lineup if you said it in front of me right now.
Oh, the big Jack
he
Crane
actually had
machine.
his little razor.
Yeah,
shaved.
Yeah, Bill Duke was shaving with a blue Bic razor. Now Billy cuts himself.
Didn't the Indians? Yeah, the black guy was shaving himself with a razor, just dry, like sitting there.
Yeah, and he broke it.
Yeah.
No, you're thinking of when he cuts his chest before he sacrifices himself to buy mate.
That's the big Predator knife. Jack Crane.
Yeah. You're right. The Indian didn't shave. He cut his chest with it when he was sacrificing himself.
Badass he is.
Yeah.
That one got us all.
Those are good. Those were good choices.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The Rambo knife thing comes up almost every time.
Of course it does.
Yep.
It has to.
Of course it does.
Iconic.
That's the first knife I ever remember being a knife was the First Blood before Rambo when I was a kid, man. He unscrewed the cap and there's a fucking compass in it, man. How cool is that shit?
Yep.
And then every swap meet you went to had bullshit Rambo knives with the nonsense big ball compass hanging off the end of it.
Yeah.
But that's
not even unscrew it. It wasn't even hidden in the cap. It was a big plastic sphere that hung on the thing.
They were still cool and they were like $9. So
I still got mine.
I've got one somewhere. And the reason I have it is because some dude stabbed me in the head with it when I was, 11 or 12.
Many things are becoming clear.
There's a scar now that I shaved my head. The scar's still there. This dude sunk this thing into my head and it stuck. And he freaked out and ran. So he runs and there's this big stupid $9 swap meet knife sticking out of my freaking skull.
Yeah.
And I kept that thing.
Like Tom said, that explains a lot, Brian.
It probably does. I never really thought about it, but yeah, probably things are coming together now.
Yes.
There's a lot more meat around the skull than most people think, and it bleeds a lot.
Dude, I bled for like 3 days, man. I had to hide it from my mom because I was terrified of getting stitches. And I was a kid. Like I said, I don't even think I was in junior high yet or right around that age. I was 11, 12 years old. Little guy, and I was deathly afraid of stitches.
Okay, Tom, you're the medical guy in the show. Why does your head bleed so much? I've had that where I was like in a test vehicle and somehow bashed my head against the latch loop that sticks out the back of a hatchback.
Yeah.
And
the scalp is super vascular. Like there's a lot of blood flow up there. I mean, think about it. You got to have the brain really needs to be kept at the right temperature and all that stuff. So
yeah.
it bleeds like crazy, and it's a lot. There's a lot more tissue than you think.
It's the
I've seen the
capillary
skull.
system, right? Like your whole head, if you look at it, is
Yeah.
a million little capillaries for cooling and maintaining our temperature. Where
Yep.
a lot of
Heat,
blood is
cool.
right there near the surface.
Yeah.
It was like a murder scene whacking my head like that.
Oh yeah, you bleed a lot.
Oh yeah, it sucks.
And that tissue's like half an inch to an inch thick, depending on the person.
Yeah.
It's a ways down to the skull.
Is it
Good to
on the
know.
top?
Yeah. It's there's more tissue than you think there. I promise.
Are we all feeling the top of our heads?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm rubbing that scar where that dude shanked me.
I'm going
like,
going
man, it's
eighth inch
Deep.
maybe.
skull.
No, it's deeper than you think. I've seen it pulled back
I'm gonna check tonight.
multiple times.
All right. All right. Next time I pull my brain out to charge it, I'll take a measurement.
let's hope none of us experience it again, because there's a lot of bleeding happens, man.
Very unfun.
Yeah, nobody needs to bleed that much.
That was a good fun question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, nothing like blood and guts. We cover blood and guts almost every episode on Mark of the
oh,
Maker.
good.
What-
Glad I could be here for it.
So we're going to wrap up, Brian, but do you have any projects you want to talk about? Fellhoelter, Terzola thing might be one. I don't know. You got any other stuff you want to talk about that's coming up for you?
You know, that's an excellent question. And if I was a smart guy and a businessman, like we talked about earlier, knowing that I was coming on this podcast that people listen to, I would have prepared something and thought about having something to plug. And I have absolutely nothing.
That whole people listen to thing is good. Thank you.
Right.
I mean, I'm working on all kinds of stuff. The coolest new things to me, the ones that still pique my interest right now, are the yo-yos and the flashlights. And the yo-yos, one of the reasons for them right now is I'm actually coming up with a way to do plastic and titanium. So it's kind of got an old school, almost Duncan, because you're playing with a plastic thing, but it's still not. It's higher tech because there's a lot of titanium parts and all the weight and everything comes from titanium. So those are the things that've got my interest right now. But yeah, like I said, if I was a good businessman, I'd have come up with something.
What were you going to say, Sean?
I was going to say, was there a question you thought we would ask that we didn't, or a question you wanted us to ask that we didn't?
No, because again, I didn't really.
No,
My whole
no
thought process.
preconceptions, right?
Yeah, my whole thought process leading up to this was, I got to remember to hook that thing up on Tuesday night.
That's how the best interviews happen.
It really was. It wasn't like, oh, I hope we talk about this or talk about that. And if I was smarter, I would have spent a little time thinking about those things. But here we are.
I'm glad to know that we were able to meet your incredibly low expectations.
Oh yeah, expectations exceeded for sure.
All right, Brian, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
All
buddy.
right. We're going to wrap it up a little bit. We got to thank our friends again. Patreon, Giant Mouse, Bob and Susie, Terzola.net, Knife Joy, Paladin 33, and Arizona Custom Knives. Go support those folks. They support us. And we appreciate all of you listening and sticking with us. We've been doing this 7 years, which is wild. I guess we're
That
going to
is
keep
kinda
going for a little
crazy.
while. Yeah.
Is it that long?
Yeah.
And I haven't listened?
Thanks, Brian.
Right.
The interesting thing is, though, I know everybody, all the people you just pimped right there. I can vouch for all of them. They're all awesome.
Yeah.
And I know every one of them, and they're all great. So you guys
You
have
know us
excellent
too.
sponsors for sure.
We do.
You know us too, Brian.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to want to listen to us, though. Brian will be set till, episode 475 after this conversation. I don't
Hey,
need to
I
talk
might
to
listen
any
to
of
this one. My kids
Probably
will have to
won't.
show me how, but I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It may not be one of our best ones. I don't know.
No. The ratings just came in. It's not good.
Yeah.
Not looking good. Hey, as long as I don't tank it for the next guy, we're doing all right.
I think I have to make an observation that it's been consistent that residents of the state of Mississippi that have appeared as guests on the show are notoriously not listeners of the show. Les and Chad.
I don't know. They may not get podcasts down there.
We're lucky we get internet, man.
Hey, man, you got
Seriously,
that.
I didn't have shit for internet till Elon started sending up rockets.
You got that internet down there.
We do now.
Yeah.
And I think our government's entirely unhappy about it.
Maybe so.
Starlink.
Yes. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks, all.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, guys.
To learn more about our makers, you can find Tom Crine on the web at crineknives.net, in his Facebook group, Crine Knives, or in his Instagram account, at Crine Knives. For Michael Birch, check birchtreeblades.com, Facebook group Birch Tree Blade Works, or Michael's Instagram at birchtreeblades. For myself and the Raygun Bead Project, we're on the web at raygundivision.com. We have a Facebook group called Raygun Division, or my personal Instagram, at msteiner. For those interested in photos, references from the show, or some discussion about the show itself, you can find us on the web at markofthemaker.com, in a Facebook group called Mark of the Maker, or on our Instagram, at Mark of the Maker. Last but not least, the ultra cool and haunting background music we use for the show is a piece called Noir Guitar by Stevie's Amp Shack, found at the Free Music Archive and licensed under Creative Commons CC BY 4.0. Thanks for listening.